Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Centurion Leadership Battalion podcast, your source of accountability, inspiration, and motivation to become your best and reach your fullest potential every day. Our motto, it's simple: to use our determination to crush our everyday leadership tasks so that we dominate in our delivery of services and products to our clients and achieve victory and personal growth, profitability, and creating environments for those around us to prosper. Let's get this show started.
Welcome back to the Centurion Leadership Battalion podcast. I am Alaina, your host once again, and today we are doing a Q&A episode with Justin Bizzarro, who is on with us. We're really excited to have an opportunity to share some insight with you in leadership and business and things you can even use in your personal life. Before we get started, we would love to have you leave us a review or a 5-star rating if you are listening to us on a podcast streaming app. It's very important that we continue to get these ratings as we grow the podcast. You can also follow along with us on the Centurion Instagram and Facebook, which will all be linked in the bio and description of the episode. And we really, really love to hear feedback from you. So we would love to get some commentary from our audience. So thank you so much for that. And welcome, Justin.
Hey, Alaina, how are you today?
Doing well. I'm excited for our question today and just to learn a little bit more about leadership.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. So everyone, I love everyone and sharing. Please submit questions. You know, I think part of the thing that Alaina's asking is we're happy to answer questions. We can keep coming up with them for sure, but we've got a few early on, but we think we need more. So everyone, throw out your questions. I'm happy to answer other questions or have research or maybe even find people to answer those questions if we don't know. But let's, sort of broaden the horizon here of what we're asking and trying to sort of, get more in depth of this whole leadership question. Because the farther I dive into it forcefully, not any because of food service partners, but because I'm trying to make sure that I do my research and stuff for this podcast. There's a lot of dense centuries and philosophies and things that have come out of this in psychology of leadership that's just pretty fascinating. And the difference of being a follower and a leader, and in the importance of following to learn how to lead, but following a good leader. So I think there's a lot of cool things that are coming out of this podcast for me personally. I hope for the audience as well, and you, Alaina. But all right, let's get started. What's the question?
So today's question is going to be, why is the ability to remove a doubt a valuable leadership quality? So I will let you get started on this conversation.
I love this question, actually, and here's why. Because I think so much leadership studies and people are taught are always about self-doubt. How do you remove self-doubt as a leader? How do you remove self-doubt as a leader? And it puts so much emphasis on removing that self-doubt. I mean, at this point in the world with so much research around it, self-doubt is like leadership 101. If you were talking like college, like this is something that you should know how to do and remove self-doubt. There's enough research out there. There's enough ways to practice it. If you're single, you know what to do. Like go try to talk to people at bars. Pickup's probably the wrong word, but start a conversation and actually build more of a relationship with someone. That's building things like our core value number 2. There's different ways to perfect the skill of trying to get rid of your self-doubt and building confidence in talking to people. So I think that self-doubt, like 101, maybe we'll do a whole podcast about it in depth, but this question is more about being able to remove doubt from someone else. At least I think so, because I think in leading, you also have to get rid of other people's fears and other people's doubts in something. And you have to be able to almost, scream at mountaintops, but have proven leadership while you're screaming and credibility in order to do it. So how do you remove doubt? I think if we go back to the self-doubt thing, the way you remove self-doubt from yourself by putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. You go through hardship. Life kicks you in the ass a few times. You bounce back. You go out in the world by yourself and make your own mistakes. Those are all things that I think help get rid of self-doubt. We talk about experience and exposure a lot in the leadership of the podcast. Obviously, those are all things also that get rid of self-doubt, which is weird because I find that the more the experience that you have and the more confidence I have, literally the more questions I have. Like my brain is like, whoa, what about this? Well, what about this? And so that's the cool part, is that even in the pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of being a great leader, I know that I know less and less. And so I'm thirsty for more and more. And so how do you get rid of doubt? You create that thirst in people. You become that beacon and that model of getting rid of your own self-doubt, but also getting rid of doubt when it came to leadership and confidence and success. So, okay, I can become confident at the gym. I go to the gym, I do my workout, I get muscles, or I get into shape, or I run the marathon. Those are incremental things that I think a lot of people even struggle with to do anyway. But, that is a thing to get rid of self-doubt. Get in a gym routine and don't let yourself down. Do something that makes your mental toughness a little better. But that's how you lead the people around you too. They've got to be a little bit uncomfortable. And people are like, oh, the whole point in peace of mind. Yes, but peace of mind comes from purpose, and purpose comes from hardship and feeling like I've accomplished something. And accomplishing something means that I then have the confidence that I know that I did it. So when you getting rid of doubt means before you ever have to get rid of something or a strategy that the group doubts, or the people that you lead, or the team members you lead, as we call them in food service partners, or whatever you call them in your organization or your community, the important thing is that you're building confidence in all the employees, or all the team members, or all the community leaders, or all the volunteers, whatever it is. Like it has to be a little bit difficult. Otherwise it's not rewarding in everything that you do. And if you do that first and you get rid of those self-doubts in the individual, and then you also encourage them, like I just said, to get rid of their own self-doubts. There's plenty of, like, you can type it in online, how to lead through your self-doubts. Like there's millions of articles, and I'm sure we could do a whole series on it because there's so much information on it. But it's encouraging that. Like, I am not the expert in the self-doubt. I went through it. I don't even remember what it was like trying to gain the confidence. I just know that I try to always look forward. So looking backwards through all of it, it's like, yes, I went through all of it. I probably, if I looked at it backwards and had to go through it all again, I mean, like, oh shit, that was really tough. Would I do that again? I don't know, probably, because I don't know how else to gain experience and get rid of self-doubt other than going through it. So everyone's got to go through it. So if you want to get rid of self-doubt as a team, athlete and coaches do this all the time. You use practice to push them as a group and push them into hardship. And you've got to actually make it uncomfortable. Each practice should be hard. Practice in your corporate environments should be hard. There should be uncomfortability and learning and growing. That's the point, growing pains. And so when it comes time to promote a strategy or something that people are going to be afraid of and have doubt, especially in a world that fear mongers so much right now. People are so attached to fears, and fear is spread into our school systems and our parents and our grandparents and our social circles. And a lot of people, when you try to succeed or you try to go outside the comfortability, it's their uncomfort that they're bringing on you. That's obviously a valuable lesson. Like, don't take it personally. Like, I do sometimes still to this day, because I'm a big dreamer and I have big drive, and no one gets in my way. And I use the negativity or the doubt. I use other people's doubt as my motivation to prove them wrong. And it's just what drives me on a greater purpose. Obviously, what drives me is growing humans. And I feel that proving someone wrong and saying, hey, I did it and I worked my way up, it wasn't just luck, and I'm willing to do this with you and share it on a podcast, that person can be like, oh, maybe they can get rid of the same doubt that they were projecting on me. So it's the same with the employees. We're forcing it. I'm living by example. I push through my doubts. And then corporately, hopefully when you come up with a strategy, like I said, that's hard. You're already preparing them for the hardship. And yes, there's going to be doubts and fears, but they're a little more conditioned to it. Like we talk about sports conditioning and conditioning, but it's the same mentally. Like we need to condition our athletes, our corporate athletes, if that's what you want to call them, mentally. It's just the same thing. You prepare, you train, and it's beyond just the skill sets, and it's beyond the warm and fuzzy and butterfly and rainbows, and everyone should just get along. There should be competition. It should be difficult at times. It should encourage hard conversations. Hey, and businesses, people spend most of their time at work, really. Like, I can't thinking about it and involved in their lives and everything else. So, why not make it more? Why not have it be more purposeful and make sure people will believe in your strategy more and believe in you more as a leader? And that requires you putting yourself through hardship and getting rid of self-doubt, like I said, and then preparing them for when you have to go through some hardship like COVID or the coronavirus that comes out of nowhere, or the housing crises in the 2000s, or whatever other crises we seem to have about every 11 to 13 years in the pattern of life in our economy, at least in the United States. So that often affects the world at this point. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Alaina? I guess, how do you feel that self-doubt, it should be eliminated, and how do you gain confidence to go into things that you haven't experienced before?
I think this ties in really closely with what we talked about on the last episode, or the 2 episodes ago, just about getting experience and how that helps to build more confidence in leaders, and professionally and personally. I think that, I might take this a different direction, but you hear a lot about imposter syndrome in new leaders and new, people that are just in any new industry, right? Or any new role. So whether you're a speaker, an author, or you want to start a food blog, it could be anything. But you always have that little bit of self-doubt when starting something new. I think even the most confident of people experience self-doubt. I know that I have. I assume that in times in your life, maybe you have, maybe not. But I think that a lot of times when start trying something new or starting, in something you've never done before, you experience that, what they call imposter syndrome. And basically, if you've never heard of imposter syndrome, it's basically, even if you have all the credentials, you have all the experience, whatever it is, when you step into that new role and you kind of get more people looking at you or expecting things from you, you start to feel like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Like I am not experienced enough to be doing this, or I am not, good enough to be in this role or handling this problem, whatever it is. And you kind of feel like an imposter in that role. You feel like you don't have the credentials or experience to be there. And I think that overcoming that is one of the most important things as a leader, or as, even if you're not a leader in your role, maybe you are an employer, a member of a team, and you're not, so to speak, the leader or creator of a business or brand. I think anyone can have that imposter syndrome whenever they're starting something new, and it causes a lot of self-doubt, and it actually stems from self-doubt too. So it's kind of like this never-ending cycle. And I think finding ways that you can, remind yourself, whether it's, doing affirmations every day, or doing more self-development, reading or podcasts like this, or whatever it is, or talking to a mentor, because I guarantee that that person that's a few steps ahead of you has walked through where you are. So they have that experience too, to give you that insight into, this is how I dealt with that. This is how I dealt with this. So I think just, battling self-doubt is very important, because you won't be able to make it to that next step, or really to achieve anything, if you can't get past that initial self-doubt. So I think there's a lot of different tactics. Maybe we could talk a little bit more about that as we end this episode. of just different ways. I know I said a couple of like self-help books and podcasts like this, and, doing affirmations every day, really just tuning yourself in mentally, to motivate yourself. I don't know, Justin, if you have any stories or experience.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the imposter syndrome. I understand the term, and I know that it's a very catchy term. I kind of disagree with the use of it, but it's okay. An imposter is someone that's pretending to be someone that they're not. So like, I guess in my opinion, the mindset there, and this is one of those things where I disagree with mainstream just as an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, the minute you do something, you're gaining experience in it and you're in a first level. So for someone to call you imposter is kind of a funny thing. I do recognize the feeling though. I just disagree with the word, I guess, in its use. And here's why. Because when I started the podcast, like Martin Luther King, they did the Martin Luther King podcast for Justin and Food Entrepreneurs. By use of this word, was a podcast host imposter. It was the first episode I did. I was starting it and I was pretending to be a podcaster, if I go by that method, right? And I agree with it. I know Justin Bizzarro's mindset. I know my brain. I know for some reason I had self-doubt in my head there. Now it's kind of funny. It's like the whole public speaking thing, how afraid I was to be on stage, like as a kid. And now it's like, no problem whatsoever. Like, you can't shut me up. And so I don't know why it is, but I do know that if we think less about it as I'm impostoring something and more that I'm gaining my first experience in something to become a professional, that's okay. And even in the podcast, like, it's okay to admit and be self-aware with your audience. Like, it's okay to be vulnerable and say, this is my first, I am learning this, I'm doing the journey with you. And so that's how credibility happens. You just, you want to get rid of the imposter syndrome. You want to have confidence, like, rate the confidence where you are. And I'm not saying don't have an ego and don't have big dreams and don't pave people the road. Like, obviously, like, I ideally want FSP and Primal Rock to be billion-dollar companies. That's a big dream. It scares the crap out of people. And it gives a lot of people a lot of self-doubt. Well, how are you going to do that? That's a big goal. And what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my job? And what's going to happen to my family? And da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so, but that being said, am I an imposter of being a billionaire because I'm setting up and saying that I'm going to be a billionaire? Am I a billionaire imposter? So that's hard for me, because I think that we've created in society as an identification of fear to give it a term. But the reality is the minute you step out of yourself to an uncomfortable situation, you're gaining experience in whatever it is that you want to become a professional. So it's by far not an imposter. You could say you're an apprentice. You could say I am learning, but you're definitely not impostoring something now because you're whatever. Now, the reason I think the term is relevant in another way is there are a lot of people that don't have experience in things, like tangible things like manufacturing or food in my case, or things that go and be consultants and claim to be credible in those things. And that's more of impostoring something, where you falsify your experience or aren't self-aware enough to take your experience and be like, I don't have enough experience to do this, to be this. I need to go get more experience. And so that's also admitting I'm an amateur and I'm an apprentice. I wouldn't call it an imposter, but you certainly don't want to go out pretending you're a professional. And so, it's like the Centurion Leadership Podcast. It's a developing thing. Am I a professional leadership coach? No. Am I Justin Bizzarro, professional entrepreneur, food person? Yep. Did I put leadership and learn all my skills in food and business? Yes, I have those skills. But do I go out and coach it and am I professional in it? Nope. Even after 23, maybe arguably way more years with whatever athletics and all that and businesses of leadership, I still am an amateur in what I'm doing with the podcast. We are still learning as we go, which just by pure coincidence, we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, divinely, that it ties this podcast all together. So I really like this topic, Alaina, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I identify it in a very black and white way. And I know words aren't always meant to be literal, but in this case, and in the world of getting rid of self-doubt, you need to be very literal with things. And you need to be very literal about what's someone else's opinion and insecurities and what are yours. And what are the insecurities you need to get over, not someone else's for you. And in the minute you start doing that, you're not impostoring anything. And if you are a consulting business and you are trying to gain experience and you don't want to be imposter, just give away your services for free, or volunteer it, or do whatever, or go work for someone and then go volunteer it. But like, there has to be the steps of gaining the experience, learning from someone else, entrepreneur groups, podcasts. I don't know what it is, but it needs to be filling your head. And when it comes to consulting and stuff, like, I deal with a lot of consultants and people that are claiming to be pros in this and pros in that, and we'll get you, followers or whatever the thing is today. Like, how do you, it's this simple. How do you trust someone that's never gone through the experience, or that is willing to admit they are going through the experience? Like, it's a journey, not a destination, but that's what it is. So, would I say Alaina and I are professional podcasters? I don't know. I sure shit think we're having a lot of fun doing it and gaining the experience. And so if we put titles on it and we give labels, as I guess generations call it, if we label ourselves as imposters or worry about being imposters and label ourselves that way, you just put the self-doubt there yourself. Like, it's just a self-prophecy. Like, I'm like, why do we do that? If we put it into our brain, we manifest it. And so for me, I don't surround myself by people that are naturally doubting in themselves. It's too much for me. I can pick up people and I can grow people, but my closest circles, like my closest people that see the most vulnerable me, the authentic me, like, I need confident people that are willing to plow the road forward, that take negativities and look at them as opportunities to grow and things like that. Because when they don't doubt themselves, they're not also putting their doubts on me, and vice versa. If I'm confident in myself and I don't put doubts on them. And I still do it. Don't get me wrong. In my relationship with Deborah, there's doubts that are misplaced. There's doubts in work that are misplaced. It happens. We all have them. I still make mistakes. I'm still learning in this. And I'm still, in this case, an imposter, because in the reality is it's a lifelong pursuit, and no one ever becomes the ultimate of any one thing. We become a strive for excellence and being excellence in our life and having a well-roundedness, but being well-rounded and being a full-grown human means you're not great at just one thing. It's just the way it is. You can be known for something, but I wouldn't let it define you. And so how do you get rid of self-doubt and not be an imposter? It's confidence. It's looking at your circles. It's making better decisions. It's learning to say no. Like, no is a powerful word. Just say no. Like, seriously, I know I don't want to drink. No, I don't want to go out. No, I don't want to do this. No, I want to work on my health instead. No, on Friday, I'm going to work out instead of going out. No, I don't need to do this. No, I'm not going to let you pressure me. No, I'm not going to do what you asked me to do. Like, it's about protecting yourself and setting your own boundaries. And so how do you not be an imposter and not have self-doubt? Really, it's having an honest conversation with yourself. And, there's a lot of these things I see online about mindset. And so, the mindset, this, that, other thing. And really, it just comes down to this. I am self-aware to know that for my entire life, I know nothing. And I have to learn as much as I can always. And while people will come to me for my expertise, I'm still constantly having to gain experience for people to constantly believe that I'm credible, because I have to continue to grow and gain experience for those to look at me with less experience and less growth as a model. And there's people ahead of me, guys, that are mentoring me, that are younger or older than me in age, that are farther along in the entrepreneurial journey or the leadership journey or whatever. Because listen, I may be better than that person at food, but that person may be a better person at figuring out how to do logistics, and I need to listen to them. I need to learn, because I'm an imposter in logistics world, because we're still a 23-year-old company, and there's UPS and FedEx and all these companies that are logistics giants. So, little old food service partners here, comparatively, yeah, we'd probably be a little imposter because we're playing around in distribution with our, smaller fleet comparatively, even though it's fairly large, right? So, it's just a matter of perspective. And so how do you get rid of self-doubt? Change your perspective of yourself and realize that there's nothing that can happen without working out your brain, working out your body. It just doesn't happen. And if you want to become credible and you don't want to be an imposter, just go learn from someone, and someone else can help give you credibility. This podcast can give you credibility. Drop the name. Oh, I'm at work. How are you doing? You need to do better leadership. Well, I'm doing a really good job. I'm listening to Centurion Leadership podcast. I'm listening to Jocko Willing's podcast on leadership and stuff and I'm reading this book, that book, and that one. Those are tangible things. And especially if you then turn around and use them and get rid of your own self-doubt by practicing the things you hear on the podcast or the things you read in the books. So it's a really good question, Alaina. I think a lot of young people suffer from it because there's so much fear mongering that goes on. It pushes a lot of doubt into people. And are imposters out there that try to take advantage of people and have programs that are like, oh, get rich quick and pay my fee and I'll help you out. And then they get screwed. That's an imposter. And so I think there's a lot of that. And I think there's a lot of consultants, even in the food business right now. Blows my mind how many people come in and be food consultants and have no operations experience and try to represent these clients with the manufacturer. I'm like, what is going on here? And so it's, that's the thing to me, realize what you don't know, be humble enough to have a partnership with someone, admit what you don't know and admit you're willing to learn. And I'll tell you, anyone who does well in my organization or within my management, they're the ones who admit from very early on that they want to learn and they don't know a lot and they're willing to learn whatever it takes from me. And they want to be an entrepreneur, or they want to be build a brand, or they want to do whatever in food. And the willingness to admit that I don't know seems like doubt, but honestly, it's like the thing they do in AA. I'm Justin and I'm an alcoholic, for example. You admit it. And once you admit it, there's no more doubt. Say it out loud. I am Justin Bizzarro and I have doubt about public speaking. It's the same philosophy. And, it's kind of funny because there are real no steps to life, but programs, steps like we're doing with the core values, things like that, in putting it in achievable steps to build a foundation. So when life does add the chaos, you're more prepared, so things like that. You gain confidence in ways. If you're struggling with something, like we just talked about, doubt comes from sometimes the decisions we make or background issues or family dynamics. Just go talk to someone also. I really I've done it. Seriously, anyone can listen. I've been therapist, professional, for my career, for personal, whatever, since 2010. Seriously, it's a very huge part of my life. And I am a very emotional person, and you'd think I'd be more calm. But what they've taught me is that I have superpowers in my emotions, but it doesn't mean that I don't do things logically still. I don't make decisions emotionally, but I use them as the beacon. So self-doubt is just me telling myself I need to go gain more experience. And I need more experience. And so Let me go get it. And I admit it. I need more experience. Can you help me get more experience? I just said it out loud to someone else. Boom, self-doubt gone. Seriously, it works. I don't know why. It does when you say it out loud to someone else. And so, and make sure that someone else is someone who's been down the road, not like a parent or a friend that's going to be doubt that doesn't understand where you're going through. I don't mean that to get rid of self-doubt, because that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about someone who has been through something and they have something that you want, meaning it's not, maybe you don't want to be Justin Bizzarro, food entrepreneur, whatever. You don't want to be exactly me, but you want to be successful in your life similarly to the way that I have. And so then they would come to me for that similar thing. Hey, how would you do this? And I can give you comments. Hey, I've been there before. Let's do this. It's okay that you said it out loud. We're good, right? I understand because I've been there. And believe me, it's rough. And you're not alone. Because self-doubt is really also the feeling of loneliness. Like you're the only one going through it. So
I think that makes a lot of sense, and that will definitely help so many people that are struggling with that in this time. And I think that everything shared today will definitely reach a ton of people that are struggling with whatever it is, starting in a new industry, starting in a new role, position, and just help be a source of positivity for them.
You really charged me up on that one. That was a good question. Alaina, that was amazing.
I'm glad. Well, we appreciate everyone listening, and we hope to have you back on another episode soon.
That was outstanding.